My first guest is Albert John Roberts. He is running for Tarrant County District Attorney in the state of Texas. Albert, welcome to Rebel Headquarters.
Hey, how's it going?
Good,
How's it going,
good.
Cenk?
So I want to break this down in a couple of ways. One is your opponent, the Republican that is the current DA there. I want to get to her in a second because she's done some interesting things there that are potentially problematic. But let's start with you. You were worked in the Dallas DA's office for about 6 years. You partly worked under Craig Watkins, and this really caught my attention. You had the nation's first conviction integrity unit. What does that mean? What does that do?
That's correct. So I had an opportunity to work under Craig Watkins. He created one of the first conviction integrity units in the nation. And a conviction integrity unit is basically saying a conviction that was good 20 years ago needs to be good today, needs to be good 20 years from now. What we've learned through modern DNA testing on a lot of different cases and a lot of different instances is that we have convicted some innocent people. We've sent them to prison. We've actually sent people to death row that were innocent. And what the conviction integrity unit did in Dallas is they looked at some of those old cases and those old convictions, and they exonerated numerous individuals, more in Dallas County than they had done anywhere else in the nation. Basically, you're bringing integrity conviction. The role of a prosecutor is to seek justice. The role of a prosecutor is not to convict, but to seek justice. And when you realize that, you realize it doesn't matter if you get the conviction or not, as long as you're doing it for the right reason and the right folks are going to prison. Because if you send the wrong guy to prison, not only do you punish somebody who's innocent, but you also let off a bad guy who actually may have committed the crime. So the taxpayers really pay the price, and so do the citizens.
Yeah, I briefly worked in two prosecutors' office as an intern, and I always was stunned to see prosecutors, especially later as I covered the news more and more and saw a lot more cases of bad intent from prosecutors who care so much about their own careers that, oh, I'm gonna be a tough guy, I'm gonna put people away. And I always thought that's not that tough if you put the wrong person away, because the guy who actually did it is still out in the streets, let alone the fact that you've committed a great injustice. So it's really sad that it took till so late in our history to have the first division inside a prosecutor's office where they actually look to say, hey, did we do the right thing or the wrong thing? And so how many cases, I don't need a specific number, but if you can give us a sense of how many cases did it turn out in Dallas that they had done wrongful convictions on?
Sure, I can tell you, during Craig Watkins' administration, over 30 people have been exonerated. And again, not all of them just related strictly to DNA evidence, but I'll tell you, as we focus on and look at what's going on in Tarrant County, Tarrant County's created a newly created conviction integrity unit in 2014. And what I'll tell you is there's a guy right now who's sitting on death row. He was convicted of capital murder in 1988. And there was a news article that just came out last week. And that news article said, not only the news article, but his attorney said, there is DNA evidence from a 1988 conviction, a guy sitting on death row in Texas that has not been tested. And my question for our current DA and for the taxpayers of Tarrant County and for folks in America that are looking at us and listening to this is, conviction integrity is important, but how do we send a man to death row and put him on there since 1988 and he remains there without any accountability from our current elected officials? And again, you haven't worked in the prosecutor's office before, Cenk. You can appreciate the fact that, prosecutors want to get convictions, and that's understandable at a certain level. Once you're in trial, the gloves are off, and again, your role is still to seek justice. Prosecutors have that unique role in a trial. The defense attorney, his job is to, represent his client zealously. The judge's job is to call balls and strikes, but prosecutors represent the taxpayers, prosecutors represent the victims, prosecutors represent defendants, prosecutors represent the entire process. The integrity of the criminal justice system is built on the integrity of those individual prosecutors. In Texas, the Michael Morton law went into effect, and Michael Morton is a man in Texas who spent 25 years in prison for a crime he didn't commit. And while he was sitting in prison, the actual person that killed his wife was out committing more crimes and committed more murders. And so we lose in that. And the question we got to ask ourselves right here in Tarrant County, because again, Dallas County is right down the street. Tarrant County has not looked at some of these cases the same way. And the question I'm asking is, why haven't we? And if we're not doing it, what are we going to do to fix it? And if we're saying everything is fine, everything is great, just that's Dallas's problem. Well, that's an easy way of solving a problem is by pushing it down the road, saying it's somebody else's problem. But we got to realize that we didn't always have it right here either. And if we realize that and accept that, I believe we can fully go forward and make improvements on a criminal justice system that me and you and a lot of the listeners that are looking at us tonight realize it's not a perfect system. Because again, this system is designed to punish the poor, unfortunately, and a lot of times the folks of color. And again, we can't separate those two because again, the statistics say, there's a lot of poor folks of color in this country, and but that the system is designed, whether it's through bail reform or through other measures, we criminalize the folks that are addicted to drugs. We send them to prison. We lock them up, throw away the key. They don't get off drugs when they get out of prison. They're still addicted to drugs. And so if we're not going to be sure and confident about rehabbing people, diversion programs, getting people into alternative means besides locking them up, throwing away the key, Texas, not only will be the death penalty capital of the world, we're prison capital of the world. We have more privatized prisons in the state of Texas than any other state. There are folks making money on the backs of people sitting in prison beds. And I'll tell you, the prison pipeline is real. And in Texas, it's based on third grade test scores. So, I mean, if your third grader is at home passing their test scores and they're not building a bed for them, but if they fail those test scores, that bed starts getting built right away.
Yeah, and over incarceration also costs the taxpayers a lot of money, as you point out in your campaign. And I don't think anybody's in favor of that, including conservatives. So, and I think that now that opioids have caused such havoc in the country, finally some other folks are waking up to, hey, maybe we shouldn't put people who have a drug problem in prison. That's a weird way of dealing with a health problem.
Right.
Now that it's affecting more than just minority communities. But you explained there that poor folks are sent to prison more. I think if you're a right winger out there, you might think, nah, that just kind of sounds like the kind of thing a liberal would say, but do you really have any facts to back that up? So I want you to explain to the audience why you think that that's the case institutionally.
Well, I mean, I firmly believe not only is institutional, racism something that's alive and well in America. When we talk about the war on drugs, again, you mentioned the opioid crisis. The solution to that crisis by a lot of our elected officials has been, we need to send money to these towns to help these folks get off of opioids. Again, that wasn't the solution that the 70s came up with when they're, right after, we got out of, Vietnam War and this war on drugs took place in America. President Nixon, I believe, led that war on drugs, and the war on drugs is something that we still have alive and present today. And I'll tell you, as we look back on the war on drugs, whether it was heroin in the 70s, whether it was crack cocaine in the in the 80s and 90s, the goal was the disparity in sentencing for crack cocaine versus powder cocaine. For the listeners out there, was clear. Powder cocaine was something that was introduced in white communities, and the crack cocaine was something that was introduced in communities of color. And the disparity in sentencing, 1 gram of powder cocaine and 1 gram of, crack cocaine did not receive you the same sentence. Federal guidelines prevented that from happening. Not only federal guidelines, there were a lot of state guidelines that at that time that prevented that from happening. So we didn't send money into those communities. What we did was we locked up a bunch of people, and those people we locked up, let's be honest about it. Those are fathers and those are mothers and those are sisters and brothers. And those people went to prison. They did, 20 years, some of them life sentences for, again, drugs. And, as we try to grapple with where our tax dollars are going, again, and we realize we're sending people who are not posing a danger to society. These people are merely folks that have been exposed. They're either self-medicating, they're mentally ill, they suffer from, illnesses, undiagnosed or diagnosed. But either way, we got to find ways to get these people back into school, get these people back to work. And again, putting these folks in prison is the most extreme price we can ask a family or individual to pay, or even our taxpayers to pay. So I'm in favor of trying to come up with a alternative to incarceration. We don't end mass incarceration in Congress. We can't end mass incarceration at the president's level. mass incarceration has got to be something that we start at a local DA's office and have real policies that are going to effectuate change. And that change has to be effectuated from the top down to assistant DAs. When assistant DAs look at cases and they make recommendations, and then we also have to train our police officers how to look at what type of offenses are we're going to prosecute down there at the DA's office.
So
and again, make it clear. I'm sorry, but make it clear that low level nonviolent drug offenses like possessing less than 2 ounces of marijuana. Marijuana is legal in over 30 states. It's not legal in Texas, but I'll tell you this: you elect me as your next DA, we're not going to have anybody sitting in our local county jail that possessed a joint. It just doesn't make sense. It's unwise spending of money, and again, families have too much to lose for us to be doing that.
All right, so Albert, real quick, because we have about 30 seconds left. You worked under Sharon Wilson as a prosecutor. That's the person you're running against now. What's the issue with her, do you think? Why do you think she's got to go?
You're correct. Cenk, I worked for Sharon Wilson up until August of last year. And having an opportunity to work over in Dallas and see how they were doing things over there, and have an opportunity to work over here. Dallas is not perfect, and neither is Tarrant County. But I firmly believe that Tarrant County has an opportunity to do something better. And when I say do something better, I'm saying not just anything better. I grew up here in Fort Worth. I understand the community of Fort Worth. I'm the former Tarrant County Black Bar president here in Fort Worth. My family lives here in Fort Worth. I'm invested in this community. If I didn't step up to the plate, we would be doing the same old thing. Sharon Wilson's been in office too long, and she's done things her way for way too long. And I'll tell you, it's time for her to be accountable and held accountable to the taxpayers. And the citizens of Tarrant County have a unique opportunity in this election, this November, to not only get involved, but to change this entire dynamic in Tarrant County. Tarrant County is the bellwether county in Texas. If we win this election in Tarrant County, we will take back the state of Texas. So I'm all about it. Let's get the job done, and we can do it. And Sharon Wilson's got to go.
All right. The website's albertjohnroberts.com. Albert, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Cenk, and I appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
The TYT Plus app is now available on iOS and Android. Download to get more TYT content at tyt.com/app.